Welcome on into the Wolverine recruiting show. Clayton Sayfie here with EJ Holland. We're going to break down the latest in Michigan football recruiting this week. EJ, starting with some of your travels out west last weekend again. You've joked that LA and that kind of area is your second home, but you started in Idaho, more of an obscure place, Colston Loveland, who is not pictured there. That's Mason Graham. We'll talk about him in just a second, but there's Colston Loveland, Michigan tight end commit, kind of a diamond in the rough type, has been putting up huge numbers this year, not against great competition, but still been, super noteworthy. Let's start there before we get to your California leg of the trip and talk about Colston Loveland a little bit. What'd you see from him?
Yeah, I think Colston's one of the more underrated recruits in this class. I mean, he's a guy that's just hidden way out in Idaho, but has top 250 level potential. He got a big bump elsewhere, but he's a dynamic, athletic tight end that can do so many different things. At the high school level, he plays running back, wide receiver, wildcat quarterback, linebacker, safety, like literally does everything. He had 3 total touchdowns, an interception on defense. Obviously he's not playing against the best competition way out in Idaho, so he'll have to adapt to that. But the good thing is he's a big, strong kid that's a little more of a flex end right now. He'll have to kind of learn to be a true inline tight end, but I think he has all the athletic ability and potential in the world. So obviously ultra productive when I went out to see him, and I would expect him to get a rankings bump at some point in the future.
Yeah, and kind of one of the things with him, and I know Michigan has another tight end commit in Marlon Klein, a guy who's also kind of under the radar a little bit, but even more so really at this point now than Loveland. And Loveland's starting to get more attention. I guess, have you kind of seen that with some of the offers coming in and all of that with him, just in terms of how he's kind of more on the radar than he was even when he committed on the 4th of July?
Yeah, I mean, there are still schools pushing for him. Auburn was out at his game, and so was Arizona State. So both of those schools were out there while I was on the sideline. So it was kind of interesting. Auburn, their staff came over from Boise State, so they still have those Idaho connections. Arizona State is obviously a little closer to home, being a Pac-12 school. But he seems firmly locked in with Michigan. He said he's going to try to get back to Ann Arbor for the game against Ohio State. And right now he's happy with his decision. I think Jay Harbaugh doesn't get enough credit for the job he did in this recruitment. He identified Loveland very, very early, made him a top priority. And even this summer when Loveland committed to Michigan, I didn't put a future cast pick until the day after the day his official visit ended. He actually gave Michigan a silent commitment that same day, but Michigan wasn't expected to land him heading into the weekend. So Jay Harbaugh did a terrific job of not only identifying him, but closing with him as well.
Yeah, I just want to talk about Jay Harbaugh for a second. He is probably the most underrated coach on this staff, and that includes recruiting. When you look at the running backs that he recruited to Michigan, Zach Charbonnet, who transferred to UCLA, is a top 10 back in the country. Hassan Haskins has been, very, very productive for Michigan. Blake Corum has been incredible this season. Both those guys have 10 touchdowns, and he's also coordinating the special teams that are one of the top units in the country. Flipping over to tight ends this offseason, back to where he started at Michigan coaching, and he's starting to recruit guys and found a diamond in the rough in Colston Loveland. And Michigan's tight ends are also becoming more involved in the pass game, and they've been involved in the run game for a long time here this season. So just a quick tangent about Jay Harbaugh and the credit that he doesn't get, in my opinion at least. But enough on that, and we'll move to your California side of this trip, which was just as important to see Mason Graham, who you'd seen before but not in game, for Powerhouse Servite. They were going up against Mater Dei. It's kind of funny, the background for the YouTube people. You looking at this photo, the background of this game almost looks like it's at like a college stadium or something like that. Obviously a big game between two powerhouse teams, Damani Jackson on the other side. But I guess start with Mason Graham and what you saw out of him, another guy who's starting to get a little more attention and is one of the more underrated guys in this class.
Yeah, it was the biggest game in the country, Servite versus Mater Dei, to SoCal powerhouses, but also national powerhouses. It's funny you mentioned it looks kind of like a college stadium. It actually is a junior college stadium, and the game got sold out in 10 minutes. So that's how crazy, SoCal high school football fans are. But it was a great game. It was great to see Mason Graham, another guy that I feel is very underrated. and one of the most underrated prospects in the country, go up against the best team in the country. And I think Mater Dei this year, including IMG, I think Mater Dei is the best team in the country. I really do. And their entire offensive line has D1 offers. So seeing Mason Graham make plays against that level of competition was really good to see. Now, he didn't have a super dominant game, which I wasn't expecting him to be overly dominant in such a prime matchup against such quality competition. But he did, have plenty of flash moments. He finished the game with 5 tackles, I believe 2 tackles for loss, one or both coming against Raleek Brown, who is one of the shiftiest running backs in the country, committed to Oklahoma. He had a huge sack in the third quarter. He had a key pass deflection in the second half as well. And he never came off the field, which is impressive in itself. To play at that high of a level and to play both ways. He also started at offensive tackle and never came off the field. So, I mean, to play both ways at that level is just really, really impressive. But the thing that really stood out to me about Graham was just his motor, even going both ways at that high of a level. It was just nonstop. He was always getting after the quarterback, always getting pressure in the backfield. Even when he wasn't a factor in terms of making actual tackles, he was a guy that was, consistently providing that pressure, whether it was from the 3 or a 4-eye or a 5. He can move all over the defensive line. And I think, it made the Mater Dei quarterback get the ball out a little quicker than anticipated. So, yeah, I think Mason Graham's built really well. I think he's going to be a 3-tech all the way in Michigan's new defensive scheme. I don't think you have to add too much weight to him. I think he'll be ready in a year and he'll be a contributor. And I know he's really excited to play with the Mammoth, Kenneth Grant. And they've been talking a little bit. I think in Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, you have 2 of the most underrated defensive linemen and overall prospects nationally.
Yeah, it's crazy. So great job by the entire Michigan staff on this one. Courtney Morgan, his West Coast ties, and all of that. Let's talk about Damani Jackson, 5-star USC defensive back commit, who you were able to talk to. He's, of course, hurt, did not play, but was still on the sideline supporting his team as he has been all season long. EJ, you saw him about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, and then now you see him again. What has changed, and what's the latest?
So I saw him a day before Michigan went to Wisconsin and beat Wisconsin. So, obviously since then, again, they won at Wisconsin. They won at Nebraska. They beat Northwestern. So Michigan has continued to win since the last time I saw him, and that's what he and his dad told me. They said, "Hey, we just want to see Michigan continue to win." I think the win over Wisconsin was especially key because at the time it was considered a huge road game. Michigan's never had too much success playing at Wisconsin, and for them to go out there and win, even against, not the usual Wisconsin type of team, I still think was really impressive, especially since the Jackson family was in Ann Arbor for last year's mess against Wisconsin, I guess. But yeah, they've been really impressed with the way Michigan has continued to win. I think, the meat of the schedule is obviously coming up starting this weekend with Michigan State. Penn State still looms despite their recent issues. Ohio State, obviously, on Thanksgiving weekend. I think they're really interested to see how, Michigan performs against, the top half of the Big Ten, or teams that are considered the top half of the Big Ten. But I can tell you that Jackson really loves the defense. I can tell you he's been more than impressed with the way the defense has progressed so rapidly under Mike McDonald, the way Steve Klinkscale has really helped out the cornerbacks and has helped them look better than last year by a mile. So I feel like right now Michigan just has to keep doing what it's doing. Relationships are there. They were one of the first schools to offer Domani, Courtney Morgan, Jim Harbaugh, Steve Klinkscale, Sean Nua have all been really involved in this recruitment. On the flip side of the coin, USC continues to be a mess, but I think that, he's still a SoCal kid. Even though he's not originally from SoCal, he's still a guy that grew up there most of his life, still has a lot of friends at USC, a lot of pressure to stay home. So I think he has no reason to really decommit right now. I think he's just going to play things by ear and see what happens with USC, see if they keep interim head coach Dante Williams on staff, see who the head coach is. He's still officially visiting Alabama on November 6th. So Alabama remains in the mix as well, and is always it's it's crazy to say Alabama's a nice security blanket, but that's what it is in this recruitment. So yeah, I think Domani's just going to take his time. We won't really know what happens until signing day in December, since he is an early enrollee. But as of right now, Michigan just has to kind of keep rolling, keep winning, and keep recruiting him hard, and just let the chips fall where they may.
There you have it. Latest on Damani Jackson there. We will finish with a decommitment this
Wait,
week.
Clay, you have
What's
to say if Michigan, if you want Michigan to land Damani Jackson, where's the usual
Yeah,
spiel?
that's a good point. I almost forgot. Well, I did forget. Thanks for reminding me. So like this video right now. Just hit that thumbs up button, everybody, and hit the subscribe button on our channel if you want Michigan to flip Damani Jackson over to Michigan from USC. A lot of people out there have been showing their support. Show your support in the comments and all that. Not sure if he reads those, but, it's worth a shot, I guess, if you're a Michigan fan, right? So, yeah, go and do that. That also helps us and, helps get some more eyeballs on the videos. And then that ultimately allows us to produce some more and better content. So go and do that. Let's finish with Taishan Trent, 4-star wide receiver out of Harper Woods, Michigan. Harper Woods High School there, just outside of Detroit. He decides to decommit from Michigan. This week, we had kind of alluded to this, that he wasn't probably going to end up in the class, had a little bit of work to do. Off the field, and again, nothing disciplinary or anything like that, but just, in terms of getting into Michigan. So, timing was a little weird with it being Michigan State week, when everyone's always kind of like checking in on in-state recruiting and looking at any battles. But I guess any thoughts on the timing, and then just kind of one last recap of, as much as you can say on Taishan Trent.
Yeah, so Taishan Trent, 4-star wide receiver out of Harper Woods, was at East Point last year, as you can see in the photo. But he's he was always a big, intriguing athlete. I always, projected him as more of a linebacker or flex tight end as opposed to a wide receiver. So, from an on the field standpoint, I don't think Michigan is losing, anybody that they can't replace. Obviously, right now they only have one wide receiver commit left in Tyler Morris, but we'll talk a little bit more about wide receiver recruiting in a second. But I don't think Taishan Trent is irreplaceable. And plus, Michigan have been preparing for this for a while. Trent had some work to take care of away from the field. We've been kind of hinting at this since July or August, sometime in the summer. It was interesting timing that it took this long and happened during Michigan State week, and probably not ideal. But if you are a subscriber to the Wolverine, you kind of knew this was coming, and this was still kind of a possibility on the back end. So I don't think it's anything. There isn't anything Michigan could have done. I think things just didn't really work out from an off the field standpoint. But I do feel like right now there isn't too much to be concerned with losing Trent. 2023 has some really strong wide receivers, and there wasn't a guarantee that he was going to stick at wide receiver had he enrolled at Michigan. I did enjoy covering my time covering Taishan. Nothing to really bad to say about him as a kid or anything. It's just one of those scenarios. It happens, maybe once or twice every cycle. So that was basically it with Taishan, and Michigan's, been prepared to move on. This has been a possibility for several months.
I feel like a lot of times when somebody decommits, the fan base kind of looks for, okay, who can we blame or whatever, but just kind of one of those things that happen. You mentioned Tyler Morris being in the class, an elite guy, top 100 guy who's, recovering right now and is ahead of schedule on his ACL recovery from the spring. You have him in the fold. You mentioned there's some top guys in 2023 that Michigan's in on. Your thoughts on where Michigan goes here? Is this it at wide receiver? I know they're pursuing some more. What are some names to know? And I guess just, the full rundown.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to add another wide receiver this cycle. Ideally, you add at least one more, and then shoot for the stars in 2023. I think a lot of people are, before we kind of move on to the targets, I think a lot of people are forgetting about Tyler Morris. Like, he's still an elite level recruit, and even though he tore his ACL, I think the torn ACL still carries a lot of that old school stigma that it's like some catastrophic injury that's almost impossible to recover from. And many high level guys have recovered from ACL injuries and are just fine. Even some of the greatest NFL players. Adrian Peterson was fine after tearing his ACL. Tom Brady was fine after tearing his ACL. I mean, I think Tyler Morris, again, is ahead of schedule. I think he's going to be just fine, and he should actually be ready to go by winter conditioning. So he's that ahead of schedule, and he looks that good coming out of the torn ACL. I went to watch him work out a few weeks ago, and he was really impressive. If you didn't get a chance to read my profile on him and his road to recovery, please do. It gives you a lot of insight into what type of kid he is and how he's coming along. But we should not forget about Tyler Morris being in this class. But aside from Tyler, I think the main focus is really on Notre Dame commit Amorion Walker. We've talked a lot about Amorion here on the YouTube channel. 3-star athlete, had some offers as a defensive back, Michigan making him a priority at wide receiver. He was actually at Notre Dame over the weekend, but that commitment is still very, very iffy. Ron Bellamy has done a terrific job of recruiting Walker for Michigan. Bellamy, a Louisiana native, played for his high school head coach, went down there during the bye week to recruit Walker. So, I think Michigan's still in a good spot. They hosted him for a visit in September. They're looking to get him back on campus for the game against Ohio State in November, and I think they can still close the deal there. So I think he's the top of the board guy. Outside of that, you have Dane Key, who's set to make his decision tomorrow. 4-star wide receiver out of Kentucky. Steve Klinkscale, Josh Gaddis went out to see him during the bye week. At this time, I'm saying that safe pick is probably Kentucky. But even if Key does commit to Kentucky tomorrow, I think he's still a guy that Michigan will recruit all the way till the end. His dad played at Kentucky. He's a legacy, so it just seems like the safer option. But Michigan really, really made a nice run there and made things interesting. So, you never know. I think he's still a guy to know, moving forward. And then you have a new offer that just went out last night. Kalen Webb out of Georgia. He's a fast riser, 6'4", 175 pounds, I believe, ran an 11.1 100 meter. So that definitely great speed for his size. He, again, is a late riser. He's committed to East Carolina. Right now, Tennessee and Louisville appear to be in the best spots to flip him, but I think Michigan will likely get an official visit, even though they just offered. Then some more outside names. Michigan offered Caden Pope in the summer out of Tennessee. Not a ton of buzz with him, but a name to file away. And then another Notre Dame commit, Tobias Merriweather. His dad is actually from Detroit, a big Michigan fan, actually a member of the Wolverine. So, that doesn't hurt to keep recruiting Tobias Merriweather as well. There isn't too much there right now, but again, you never know, especially when you have those kind of ties to the program. So that's pretty much it with wide receiver recruiting. I would only expect 2 to 3 wide receivers this cycle, and then really shoot high in 2023.
Yeah, so some names to know there. And yeah, we don't want to lose Tobias Merriweather's dad's business. So, hopefully Michigan can make a move there. So there you have it for this week here on the Wolverine.com recruiting show. Make sure to head to the Wolverine.com for all of your coverage. You can just type that right in, the Wolverine.com. You'll always be able to find us as always here going forward. Whether that's October 30th, October 31st, November 1st, which is going to be a great day, November 2nd, November 3rd. TheWolverine.com is your one-stop shop for Michigan football, basketball, and recruiting coverage. And we will see everybody over there.